This is the same government that denied recognizing it's a genocide.
Tonight, questions over the delayed government action plan for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
We're having a unique experience in the world in the sense that everyone in the world is passing through this experience at the same time.
And museums are looking to create pandemic exhibits based on personal stories. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. The fallout in Ottawa continued today over a military report on the deplorable treatment of seniors in long-term care facilities. But as Jamie Pashagumskam reports, missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and the new agreement between Canada and Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs were also topics of debate.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh said Justin Trudeau is using the COVID-19 pandemic as an excuse for ignoring missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
In particular, delaying action on the calls for justice. This is the same government that denied recognizing it's a genocide, the same government that delayed the United Nations Declaration legislation, and the same government that is still taking Indigenous kids to court. Will this government commit to core funding for Indigenous services to help women and girls and ensure that the calls to justice are implemented without delay?
On Tuesday, Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Carolyn Bennett announced that the National Action Plan will be delayed due to the pandemic. June 2nd, next Tuesday, will mark the one-year anniversary of the release of the National Inquiry's final report and calls for justice. The Prime Minister saying the government is still making progress behind the scenes.
We will continue to work with those partners, but people will understand that many of those partners are very focused right now on helping frontline workers, not on establishing the report. We will continue to work with them on the report, but the COVID-19 situation has made that more difficult.
Also in the House, Conservative MP Jamie Schmale grilled Bennett on the recent deal with Wet'suwet'en leadership. On May 14, Bennett and BC Indigenous Relations Minister Scott Fraser signed a Memorandum of Understanding with Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs on rights and title. Schmale says the elected chiefs were snubbed. But Bennett cited the 1997 Delgamuukw decision, saying Canada is legally mandated to negotiate with the hereditary leadership.
There was a process for the hereditary chiefs to go back to their community and discuss with them, and any agreement after the good work that will happen now would have to go back and seek the approval of all of the communities.
Bennett said there is only a memorandum of understanding at the moment, and that a full agreement will have to be negotiated by all parties involved. Jamie Pashagumskam, APTN National News, Ottawa.
More is needed, especially with a second or third wave of COVID-19 coming. That was the message given at last night's Indigenous Peoples Committee. Innu Chief Mike McKenzie gave testimony at that meeting. Conservative MP Bob Zimmer asked him how the past 7 weeks had gone. Even with just 8 cases, McKenzie said it's been intense.
There was a lot of disagreement between the provincial and federal government. We had to fight with the provincial government. Everyone was passing the buck in the heart of the pandemic. It was hard to get some testing equipment, at least 3 to 4 weeks.
We want to hear what you think about the preparedness for the possibility of a second or third wave of COVID-19 hitting. Here's how you can continue the conversation. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca. You can find us online at aptnnews.ca and on youtube.com/aptnnews. You can also follow APTN News on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more Indigenous news. The Crown will not be appealing the acquittal of a man who was charged in the 2018 hit-and-run death of a Mi'kmaq youth in New Brunswick. 22-year-old Brady Francis of Elsipogtog First Nation died after he was struck on the side of a road in February 2018. Maurice Johnson was charged for the hit and run, but maintained that he thought he had hit a deer. Last month, Johnson was acquitted in a Moncton courthouse, sparking outrage in Mi'kmaq communities. The Director of Public Prosecutions said in a news release today that there were no indication of racial bias in that acquittal and that the judge made no errors in his decision. It was day 3 of a child welfare hearing in Brandon, Manitoba today. APTN News has been following the case for months. Here's reporter Kathleen Martins with today's details.
Child protection cases are usually private, and when we can report on them, there's strict rules about what we can tell you. But this week, APTN News was given access to listen remotely to a case underway in Brandon, Manitoba. That's where we're hearing about the tension between social workers and the birth parents around child protection issues. A couple is fighting to reunite their family because they say their young child should never have been taken from them in the first place. But social workers say they had concerns because there were domestic violence allegations against the mother's former partner. They're up against an agency that has a lawyer, but the mother and father are defending themselves. This morning, the mother had to act as a lawyer while the father was testifying, and then after lunch, the father did the same when the mother took to stand. It was emotional and challenging, but they say it shows they're willing to do whatever it takes to put their family back together. The case is expected to wrap up on Friday. Kathleen Martins for APTN National News in Winnipeg.
Thanks, Kathleen. The city of Winnipeg has always seen a cyclical rise in violence with the change of seasons. While COVID-19 doesn't appear to be impacting rates of violence, the virus still has people on their toes. Daryl Stranger reports.
Winnipeg police have responded to numerous stabbing and gun violence-related calls over the past few weekends. Constable Jay Murray told APTN that the COVID-19 pandemic has had little impact on reports of violent crime.
We don't feel that COVID-19 has really impacted crime in the city. It certainly has resulted in less calls for service for us. We feel that more people, instead of calling police, are choosing to report things online, so there's less calls for our officers to attend to. But in terms of the severity of crime, it's anecdotally just talking to other officers on the streets, it really has felt somewhat normal, very similar to what we've seen before.
Things on the streets, however, are a little different. Drug use, particularly methamphetamine, has also been on the rise in the city. Mitch Bourbonnier has been an active member of Mama Bear Clan and numerous other organizations in Winnipeg for years. He says there has been a palpable difference on the streets recently.
Not only because of the worry about the virus, but also because of all the changes and how everything is so different. And, stores are closed and resources and drop-ins and services are shuttered. And I think it's left the people feeling kind of anxious and abandoned and kind of on their own out here.
There are no numbers yet to show just how COVID-19 has impacted crime in Winnipeg, but Murray said in a few months police will have the data to make a better assessment. Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
It's time for us to take a quick break, but when we come back, the union representing prison guards weigh in on Correction Canada's response to the COVID pandemic. First, here's a look at tomorrow's weather. To the east coast, we've got 12 and cloud for St. John's, 28 and lots of sun in Charlottetown. Snow and 5 in Maine, Kuujjuaq, snow and 7. Val-d'Or, 30 and rain, same for Montreal. Sept-Îles is 11 and cloud. Ottawa, 29 and rain. We've got 26 in cloud for Peterborough. 21 in sunshine for Sioux Lookout. 25 in sunny for Thunder Bay. 5s for Thompson and Norway House, cloud there. -1 with a mix of sun and cloud in Churchill. 15 in rain for Winnipeg, Brandon, sunshine and 17 degrees. Swift Current, 21 and sunny. Regina, 19 and sunshine. 14 and sunny for Buffalo Narrows, 12 and rain for Stony Rapids. Welcome back. While virtually speaking at the Senate this morning, the president of the Canadian Guards Union said confusing pandemic guidelines from the Canadian government contributed to the COVID-19 outbreaks across the federal prison system. Jeff Wilkins says guards received no instructions from public health until late March. after the first outbreak was reported at Port Cartier Institution in Quebec. After a 2-month delay, Public Safety Minister Bill Blair told the union that random tests will be made available to guards who don't have symptoms. Wilkins could not provide an update on COVID-related releases, but reiterated that the union's concerns.
Everybody that's incarcerated, for the most part, is going to come back into the community, and there's certain things that need to be done for them to do that safely. So, when we don't follow that practice and use COVID-19 as a scapegoat for release, then we have a genuine issue with that. I don't know how more nuanced we can be.
To Saskatchewan now, where Premier Scott Moe had some sad news as he moves towards opening up the province's economy. There's been another confirmed COVID-19 death and maybe one more. Priscilla Wolfe has the story.
Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe announced the province's 8th COVID-19 case at Wednesday's Government of Saskatchewan media conference.
We are saddened to report that there has been another death in Saskatchewan due to COVID-19. We are also aware of an additional death that is currently under investigation.
Premier Moe did not give details on the death being investigated. The confirmed death is Nelda Maurice, a retired school teacher from Isla Crosse, who passed away on May 25th in a Saskatoon hospital. Lana Maurice is her daughter.
She got sick around the 26th of April, and she was flown out May 2nd. And everything just happened so quickly from there. The last time I talked to her was on the 6th or the 5th. She was messaging me on Facebook, but she couldn't really talk. It was hard for her to talk. Her breathing was kind of labored.
Lana says her mother passed away soon after she was put into a medically induced coma in early May.
She just never woke up again. Her body kept deteriorating, and the virus was in her lungs. Her major organs all started failing.
Nelda Maurice's funeral was held today in Isla Crosse. Priscilla Wolfe, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
While Nunavut remains the only part of Canada without a positive case of COVID-19, a Nunavut patient on medical travel to the south did catch the virus. Citing privacy concerns, the territorial government won't tell residents much more than that. They won't even say which southern community the patient is in, but according to the Chief Public Health Officer, the patient is doing okay.
The individual remains in hospital and is stable. COVID-19, although the individual remains on a COVID ward, it's not the COVID itself that's keeping the individual in hospital at this point.
The province of Manitoba has plans to further loosen COVID-19 restrictions next week. Today, the province announced that it will begin the second phase of its reopening on June 1st, including limited travel north of the 53rd parallel to parks, campgrounds, and cabins. Last month, all non-essential travel to the north was banned to prevent COVID-19 from entering communities. There have been no cases of the virus in any First Nation in the province. It's time for us to take another break, but coming up, museums are planning future exhibits about personal stories from the COVID-19 pandemic. First, here's the rest of tomorrow's weather. Let's head to northern Alberta, where we've got 17 and a mix of sun and cloud for Fort McMurray, 20 and sunny for Grand Prairie. 19s for Calgary, Red Deer, and Edmonton, sunny skies. Kamloops 22 and some rain. Victoria 22 and mostly sunny. 19 with a mix of sun and cloud in Fort Nelson. 18 and rain for Smithers. Dawson City sunny and 23. Beaver Creek sunshine and 19. Yellowknife 8 and mostly sunny. Same with Wauhee. 18 for Big Trout Lake for Trout Lake. Tuktoyaktuk 13 and sunny skies. Fort McPherson 22 and sunny. Chesterfield with a mix of sun and clouds and -3, Repulse Bay -1 and sunny. Pangratung snow and -1, Igloolik -3 with mostly sunny skies and -2 and snow for Cape Dorset. Welcome back. Today we wrapped up In Focus for this season. We covered a wide range of topics on the show, including talking to a Winnipeg couple who helped First Nations set up community radio stations. It's actually a lot easier than you might think. And a community that is trying to get their kids into gardening. Here's a clip.
What we've seen is in the past, the radio stations have really been unachievable. I think a lot of people have been challenged against the CRTC licensing and all these different challenges that come with getting the radio station and complying with the Canadian government licensing. But the approach that we're taking is a sovereign approach with First Nation communities. The First Nation communities are sovereign communities, and the local chief and council are sanctioning the radio stations, so we're putting in the radio stations under local control. And what's good about that is, like in the previous story, we heard about the local content, the children, and with the way things have gone nowadays is with APTN has done such a good job and NCI has done such a good job that they're covering all of Manitoba, but a lot of times the local communities are missing out their local content. So this is giving the local communities a chance to display their local talent, and even the children, like we just heard, and it really boosts community morale. And to get a radio station up nowadays, what we do is we just go in, and a lot of times if they had existing infrastructure, we could put the antennas right on the existing towers or even on top of a school and have radios running that way. So a lot of times that's saved a lot of costs. So a lot of time you're just looking for the transmitter and infrastructure just to do the basic transmission that a lot of communities just need that. And that's what we're able to do, is we're able to come in and do a turnkey operation where we could come in, install the equipment and do some light training and then walk away, and they could be running the radio station on their own.
We're going to try and see if we can get the little kids from ages 5 to 16 to see if they could do their own little tiny garden. We're providing frames, so the frames are like 2 feet by 2 feet.
Right.
And about a foot high. We're doing that to see if, we can get some little ones interested in, getting into that, so, they could have something to do this summer.
Some museums across the country are planning for future exhibits and calling on anyone who wants to share their experience during this pandemic, whether that be through written letters or artifacts. Tamara Pimentel explains.
During this time of grief and uncertainty, everyone has a story to tell. COVID-19 has affected everyone differently, and that might be finding an alternative for traditional gatherings or using that extra time to get creative. These are the stories that museums across the country want you to tell for future generations.
We're having a unique experience in the world in the sense that everyone in the world is passing through this experience at the same time. But we recognize that not everyone is experiencing it in the same way.
Jenny Conway-Fisher from the Glenbow Museum in Calgary says curators are collecting stories that matter to the public by taking submissions of written letters that tell different experiences. Fisher says an exhibit wouldn't be complete without Indigenous voices.
The Glenbow holds so many objects and belongings and things that are important to our Indigenous partners that it's important to pair those things with contemporary voices.
At the Royal Alberta Museum in Edmonton, Director of Cultural Studies Alison Perry says they want to tell stories of the pandemic through artifacts.
I hope at some point we can talk to people about what we can do in a museum setting that might showcase some of these initiatives that are community grown.
Many Indigenous people took to social media to showcase traditional dance and music. And then there are groups like Breathe, an outlet for Indigenous artists to express their art through masks. The group is also working with galleries across Canada and the U.S. for future displays. But there is more than artwork that is being shared.
Online, I think it's amazing what's been going on in terms of language revitalization, land-based learning, like some communities are going back, taking their youth back out on the land, using the language as they're gathering, and to find those sort of nuggets of beauty, I think that's probably what's getting a lot of us through.
Perry says the Royal Alberta Museum will connect with Indigenous nations at a less stressful time and when communities are no longer on lockdown. As for the Glenbow, Fisher says submissions will be accepted until July 31st. Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Calgary.
2020 has been a big year for Indigenous nominees at the Canadian Screen Awards. Online ceremonies began Monday night with some big wins for Indigenous women. Elena McDougall has more.
This film took a lot of commitment and courage from them, and it wasn't easy at any step of the way. And so I feel really good that that's been recognized as well.
We Will Stand Up is about Colton Bushy, the young man from the Red Pheasant First Nation in Saskatchewan who was shot and killed by a farmer. The farmer was found not guilty of second-degree murder. Filmmaker Tasha Hubbard directed it. She won the Ted Rogers Best Feature-Length Documentary Award for her work at this year's Canadian Screen Awards.
It's a mixed feeling, and you know, I'll truly, celebrate when we see those changes being made.
2020 has been an impressive year for Indigenous content at the Canadian Screen Awards. APTN National News had nominations in the Best National Anchor and Best Newscast categories. APTN Investigates was nominated for Best News or Information Series and Best Photography. In Focus was also nominated for Best Talkback. The network had 4 nominations in programming, 1 for First Contact and 3 for Future History.
Jennifer Podesta. Oh my God, babe! What? It's me! Yeah.
Actor and director Jennifer Podesta won Best Direction for Future History.
I really believe that this award reminds us that we can all celebrate together as a collective and say, we need more of these stories. Not just specifically in a show like Future History, but more content like that. I really do believe that our stories contribute to the wellness of society. They really do. They make us fuller and healthier and happier and create stronger relationships and definitely build tolerance and understanding.
APTN congratulates all of the award winners. Elena McDougall, APTN National News, Hamilton.
Big congratulations to Tasha and to Jennifer for their wins. The NHL has a plan for bringing back hockey games if the upcoming 2020 season is allowed to proceed.
I am delighted to be with you today to announce the National Hockey League's plans for our resumption of play.
And the NHL Players Association have agreed to the plan, which will jump straight into playoffs. 24 teams, 12 from each conference, would have a shot at the Stanley Cup. Games would be played in 2 hub cities, which have not yet been chosen, but 3 Canadian cities are on the short list: Vancouver, Edmonton, and Toronto. Well, that is your news for tonight. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Be sure to get the APTN News app on your smartphone if you haven't already done that. That's how you can stay right up to date on breaking Indigenous news. Thanks for tuning in and have a wonderful night. Stay tuned now for an APTN Investigates retrospective.